guys, so really to today's special occasion, I'm bringing on a guest that I've quite literally known, and this is embarrassing to say, 30 plus years. Best friend from the very beginning, but you know what, as it goes, you grow up, you have your own paths in life, and Jane Lynn here took the path of, some really heavy lifting, but an amazing career path that is basically officially over. And congratulations for that. Well,
thank you.
Jane, you know what? Could you just, for everybody's benefit, a little bit, like you don't need to go into such detail that like you got that big head boisterous thing. However, we want to hear a little bit about your amazing life.
All right. Well, thank you. And yes, we have known each other since we were infants, right? Because
Yes.
30 years is a long time, but it's been an amazing ride, and it's, still going. Our journeys are continuing. And yeah, so what Nate's talking about is that after a lengthy career of about 20 years in mostly technology and marketing, I am going to be officially, I guess you would call it, retiring at the end of this month, actually. Today's June 1st. So
this is your final month of putting in
that is crazy.
The work.
Yes. And I actually don't really like the term retirement, because for me, it isn't really about, when I think of retirement, I think of sitting on a beach in Florida with a pina colada for the rest of my life. And if that's what floats your boat, awesome. But for me, retirement is more about the freedom of my time and basically being able to have, design every day of my life and be able to focus on only the things that are meaningful or enjoyable to me.
So, well, you're confusing me a little bit here, because are you still going to be doing stuff and working or anything, but you're just done with the corporate career? Or are you just going to take off, see the world, and pretend like you're never going to come back to America? Which I do got to say, I'm so excited to see you in Portugal next month.
Yes. And thank you for helping kick off my sort of retirement. But yes, to clarify, it's a bit of both of what you're talking about. So I do want to keep working, but only on things that bring me joy and are things that I'm passionate about, and being able to bring creativity. A lot of it is the desire for me to want to bring a lot more creativity back into my life. I feel like for a lot of years, I adulted very hard, and I feel like I should be done adulting. And so for me, it's going to be a combination where the things that I want to create, I will pursue them and have the time now. For example, I think for the next year or so, my main job is going to be to renovate and build this house that I purchased last year in the desert. And it's been a long project and a big learning experience for me. And it's my first time to ever take on anything like that. So I went straight from never renovating a thing to buying a 1950s brick house that is pretty much a shell of a house that I'm going to renovate and add on to. So that'll be a lot of my next year.
That is so exciting. So really, it almost is, and kind of want to position this, like retirement can mean a bunch of different things. And for your career, you've reached this point through having a great career. And I'm going to name drop. Worked for the Googles, the Facebooks, the Sonys, the Zappos, if it's a big company, Jane has helped them at least just some small part to their own success. Disney. Any other name dropping that I can do? No.
I think
Okay.
you pretty much covered them all.
Yeah. Well, so you had a great career and you're saving passively, investing in stocks, investing in retirement. Question for you, like if you decided to literally do nothing ever again and sit on that beach and drink those little pina coladas, but only one or two a day so you don't go overboard because you totally turn into a tomato. I will not forget
Yes.
that.
And all those calories and pina coladas. Come on.
Fair enough. Did you save enough and invest well enough that you literally don't need to do anything? Or are you doing a transition from passive investing with a job to more of a active investing, but you have more freedom to do what you want to do?
Yeah, so mostly it's passive, and the way I've gone about it, so the financial planning aspect of it, it wasn't until, so I actually took sort of a mini retirement in 2018-19. I gave myself 18 months to have this taste of what it would be like to have ultimate freedom of my time and kind of a life experiment of what would happen. And so it was during that time. And as you know, Nate, I traveled to 19 countries I stayed in 2019. And through that time is when I actually noticed two key things about my portfolio. So one was my balance didn't go down. And I was like, wait, I just didn't work for 18 months and I traveled the world and my balance didn't go down. So I thought about that, and that was the part that dawned on me was like, oh yeah, well, yes, granted, 2019 was a great year in the stock market, but it just got me thinking, if I could continue to generate more than I spend, then I could do this forever. And so the generation part, with the investments, yes, so that's very much about making sure there's a good rate of return, and most of my investments are passive. But as I mentioned, I'm developing or building this house and renovating, which is then you can consider that more of an active investment, since I'm putting in the sweat equity of actually being hands-on with this renovation and making every decision and building onto it. So that, and then the second thing I realized was, geez, LA, where I lived at the time, I currently live in Joshua Tree now, which is the middle of the desert in California. But at the time I was living in Los Angeles, and I realized that, most places in the world are less expensive to live in than Los Angeles or most other major US cities for that matter. And so that year, even though I traveled the world, most of the time that I spent was in places that cost less to live than where I was living. So in reality, I actually spent less that year in 2019 traveling than I would have if I sat at home in LA and did nothing. And so I think those were the two big things I realized to kind of fuel this idea of how can I do this for good forever?
I absolutely love that. And now you're the first person that ever kind of brought up this term, and I didn't even know what it meant. The acronym FIRE, financial independence, retire early. Congratulations. I kind of see it as there's a few different components of it, but could you kind of explain it a little bit more? And then we'll get into like how it actually applied and you did it, but maybe just high level it.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, FIRE stands for financial independence, retire early. And there's, depending on who you talk to or who you ask, I'm sure you'll get a ton of different sort of definitions and ways of thinking about it and how to plan for it. But for me, I think in terms of how to achieve this place where you can, or get to a point when you can do that and sort of, consider all your time your own, it takes a mindset. So I think there's two major sort of categories of like what it takes to do this is mindset and planning. And so the mindset aspect of it, I think, is really around For one, you have to truly think about time as money and value your time more than things, because if you don't, then maybe fire is not for you. Like, that's not necessarily what you want with your life. For me, time is the most precious thing, and I want to be able to have the complete freedom of my time. And I literally think of time as money. So, for example, when it came time to considering getting a new car, I thought I could either buy a new car or I could take 6 to 12 months off. I'm going to take the 6 to 12 months off and not have to work. And that was more valuable than to me than buying a new car. Or like keeping up with the Joneses. Like, I used to, in my early 20s, I would go to every restaurant opening. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and follow all the chefs, the celebrity chefs, and that just became the norm. And all my friends and I would go to these amazing dining experiences just all the time.
I
But
will admit it, I will never forget going to a Versace fashion show with you. And just, I would remember being there and thinking, wow, these idiots spent how much on money? And then I was totally jealous about everybody being able to do that as well.
Right. See, it's just priorities. What matters to you? And to me, I wouldn't trade it. Those were some really fun days. When I was 25, I had a fun little Mercedes SLK. I don't know if you remember this. And I have no regrets. I had so much fun with it. It's just that if I kept upgrading my lifestyle every time I got a raise, like I was doing back then I would be forever chasing my tail and trying to keep up with myself and my lifestyle. So it's a mindset of deciding consciously that you're not going to do that. If you want to become financially independent and not be tied to sort of keeping up with making a certain amount of money so that you can keep up with a certain amount of expenses and so on. So that's what I mean by mindset. But I think another aspect of mindset is around what you're going to do with that time. So when you have financial independence and you have all the freedom of your time, I know a lot of people tell me they're afraid to retire because they wouldn't know what to do with themselves, or they're afraid they'll waste away. And so I think that you need to either have a good sense of what you would want to do with that time instead, or be dedicated to focusing on going inward and figuring out what it is that really is meaningful to you, authentic to you, and how you would want to spend that time. So it's not that you have to have it figured out on how you would want to spend your time. You may just feel like, this isn't it, but you want the freedom of your time, and that's okay. But I think it's really important to focus inward just as much as outward, on focusing like planning, financial planning, what you're going to do with your time, but also like, what is it that you want out of this precious time? So that time could, if you don't know that, or if you're not spending your energy focusing on figuring that out, then time flies, days turn into weeks, turn into years, and so on. And so you don't want that to be the case. You have all this free time and it just slips away. So I think that's really important in terms of mindset, for this whole sort of whether or not you want to pursue financial independence. And then secondly, I think, mindset was one thing, and then planning was the other. And planning is key, of course, because the path to getting to FIRE, or that point that you can become or not have to work and rely on your investments, it takes, first off, visibility. Like, how do you know where you are or how close you are if you don't know what it takes? And so I think there's several ways to figuring out how much you need in terms of your assets, how much expenses you need to stay under. But I think there's a few different things that are assumptions that you have to make. So for instance, a rate of return, like what is a reasonable return that you feel like you can get on your investments, whether they are passive or active. So in general, in the stock market, I would say, and you can chime in, Nate, I know you're heavily in this field. So 7% of a rate of return, I think, is a pretty solid sort of rule of thumb to go by. Some years are better, some years are worse. But I use the assumption of 7% of a return just to kind of give you a sense of like how you would look at it or calculate what you need.
So
So
there's I'm trying to remember what this is,
yeah.
but it was like a rule of seven. And like, if you're making 7% every year, every 7 years with compounding, you're doubling your money.
Okay, there you go.
I
Yeah,
don't
so
actually remember if that's true or not.
oh, okay. Okay, don't
quote
listen to
me.
Nate. No. Yeah, no, that's so I think I've heard something to that effect as well. But yeah, so I use as a general assumption as okay, I think I can pretty safely assume that I can bring in long-term 7% a year on my passive investments. So that's including equities and real estate for the most part. And then, of course, inflation is a little nutty right now, but in general, if you look historically, even in the past 100 years or so, inflation has typically remained around 3%. So that can be an assumption that you use as well. So you basically have to remove 3% or whatever percent that you decide is fair for inflation out of your return. So then what you're left over with is your withdrawal rate. And so if you're bringing in 7% and you have to take out 3% for inflation on a typical year, then you're left with about 4% to play with. But 4% is oftentimes a rule that people use for withdrawal rate. However, I caution you to be a little more conservative, or I like to be a little more conservative about that, because 4% is really based on a rule for people when they're 65 and older. But if you're retiring younger, then you probably want to stay less than 4%. But actually, what I did in figuring out what I needed in order to retire was not so much based on that blanket withdrawal rate, but I actually calculated my expenses in each phase of my life with a life expectancy of about 95 or so. But regardless, because at that point, once you hit this number, this balance of your investments, what they bring in, and then your expenses, as long as you can maintain that, theoretically, you would never run out of money. And so that's why the age part doesn't matter so much, but you basically have to find this balance where your leaky bucket is not leaking faster than it is that you're filling it with your investment returns.
So I actually just read a statistic that if you withdraw 4% of your passive portfolio over a 30-year retirement, there's like an 84% chance of you actually retiring successful. But now if you do the retire early, and it's more like a 50-year retirement, that 83% success can drop down to like 15 to 20% success rate. So it absolutely, you can't rely on, okay, as long as I just take out this much money. But I do want to kind of bring up, and I know that you're kind of looking at that right now, that 7% is really a long-term passive goal, but there's always active investments, or just simply kind of like your next career, as long as you have that passion and it's part of your own independence of how you're choosing your time. Really, even that 30-year, 50-year, those types of concerns are made up from active cash flow that actually can replace a lot of those savings.
Absolutely. And that's ideal, is to have cash flow on top of your nest egg so that you're not having to really touch or rely as much on your passive income or the investments that are generating your returns that you're basing on assumptions. So of course that is the safest. So although I have partially some rental income on cash flow, my hope is that I do continue to build up cash flow. How I'm going to get there, we'll see. But one of the things that's for sure is I feel like I honestly believe that I will probably make more money in my retirement than I will ever have in my career, because I don't have that pressure. I will focus on exactly what is meaningful to me. And because of that, I will be very passionate about whatever I'm working on. And I think that's really the ideal situation that a lot of us feel like we don't get to have earlier in our lives or our careers. But yeah, I think that's, everyone's wanting to work on what you're passionate about. And so I think if you can free yourself up from the pressure of working on things for different reasons, then you're really just able to dedicate yourself to something that really matters to you. And I think that is when, the potential is unknown, or like unlimited.
So we actually kind of reconnected and started talking quite a bit while you were doing your worldwide escapades.
We did.
And God, I was so jealous as you're hanging out in Thailand. Did you have this goal at that point, or was kind of your temporary retirement, your visit the world, a driving factor for you?
Yeah, at the time, it was more my intention for that sort of the 18-month mini retirement was more of I need to slow down, like I need a break. So I was burnt out, just felt like, this autopilot mode had really started to set in, where I found myself literally, I would wake up, grab my phone, start emailing. I would plow through 10 meetings a day. And then evenings I would be spending on catching up with work that I didn't get to during the day because I was in meetings all day, and then rinse and repeat. And so I would really look forward to, I found myself just living for weekends and vacations. And I thought, if I keep going at this pace, I am going to be 70 and look back on my life and realize it passed me by. And so that thought was so scary to me that I decided that taking a mini retirement without knowing what was going to happen after was the better option than to continue going. Because I felt like time is too precious for me to keep living like that, where I was just in autopilot and not really truly living like consciously. So that was my decision behind the mini retirement. But then it wasn't until the end of that I started to think, wow, because of the realizations earlier that I mentioned about how my balance didn't go down, and I was living at a lower cost of living, even by traveling. So it was something I wanted to do, yet it actually was saving me money. So these are the things that got me thinking about how can I set myself up to do this forever. And also, one of the things that I did, probably the most important thing that happened during that entire 18 months, was that I went to a 10-day silent meditation retreat, which I know you have, we've talked about this as well, and you maybe at some point will do.
And once I find 10 days that I can do absolutely nothing.
Right. And so I went to this Vipassana meditation retreat where literally I had no devices, no, phone, no talking, no reading, no writing. We were told when to eat, when to sleep, everything. So there was literally no distractions. That this actually is what changed my life, because even though I had removed the work piece of it, the pressure, the stress, and gave myself this time, my mindset was still wired in the way that it was before. So even though I didn't have to be responsible for a team anymore at that time, I would still, until this meditation retreat, I would still, even during this mini retirement, I would wake up and reach for my phone. And instead of checking for emails, I'd check Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is. So it took this, for me, it was this a Vipassana retreat that sort of gave me the mindfulness that I needed to then consciously decide what I actually wanted, or like what my dream life even looked like.
So, most people that we talk to or that I work with or maybe listening kind of fall into a couple of buckets. either they have a job and they're trying to figure out how to not have a job, or they're older and they have like an imminent retirement, but they don't have the savings, they didn't have the plan, they didn't invest the best way possible. For those types of people, like, how do you take that first step? Like, what do you even need to do or think about to make FIRE a reality?
I think having visibility is the number one thing, because until I started understanding my financial picture, I had no idea how possible this would be. So after that sort of mini retirement and these realizations that I just talked about, I knew that I wanted to do this. And I thought I might be able to, based on just kind of understanding, yeah, like if I just spend under my means and so on. So then I started to plug in numbers, and so there's apps or tools online, like mint.com is a really good one for understanding your expenses. I would recommend that for tracking your budgeting, to understand what do you even spend or need to spend to be comfortable in your retirement. And also there's another tool that I use almost daily is personalcapital.com. And that's a great sort of dashboard to track your whole net worth in your financial picture. I just think mint.com has a little better functionality for expense on the expense side. Personal Capital offers that as well. I just think not as detailed or as clear of a view on the expense side. So that's why I use both of them. But basically what each one of them does is you can link up your different financial accounts, and it gives you the full picture. So your assets, your liabilities, and on personalcapital.com, you can even see sort of your performance, your portfolio performance alongside certain benchmarks that like the S&P 500 or the US stock index or so on. And so you start to get a sense of what is even, for example, your net worth. And then what is it that you actually need to generate in returns in order to sustain your expenses. But you have to start from actually knowing what you need to spend or what you need to bring in. And so I would say visibility is first, but then either if you want to go the simplified way, there's several tools online that you can even sort of just Google on, like finding calculators for what you need to retire. But personally, I don't recommend any particular one because I think they are a bit too sort of peanut butter, like they're smearing too much. And it's not, I don't trust it. I'm not going to go off of that for my own personal retirement plan. So I basically custom built a spreadsheet that tracked all of my expenses from different phases of my life. So from now until, so on, like in 5 years from now, and because at 59 and a half, then that's sort of when you can start to tap into certain retirement accounts. So then what changes then, and then applying even different tax laws, because different accounts like your 401ks and our IRAs, traditional IRAs will be, of course, these are the pre-tax accounts, and then Roth IRAs are post-tax accounts, and then like brokerage accounts would be, things that I can touch before I'm 59 and a half. And so kind of like putting all of these on a spreadsheet, and then including, the value of my homes or properties that I own, so that I can start kind of playing my chess pieces. So, because from understanding all of that together on a page, help me see that at first, for example, I didn't have enough in terms of passive investments to tie me over from retirement age now until I'm 59 and a half, when I can start tapping into retirement accounts. And so I was able to look at it and figure out ways of moving around money or selling assets. Like I could sell a property in my 50s to be able to tie me over if I run out of cash, sell a property to then tie me over to 59 and a half before I can tap into retirement accounts. So if you map everything out on a page, then I think you can start to move things and like play them like chess pieces to figure out your plan of what works for you.
That's so interesting. I do want to note that you're not a financial advisor, but did you use a financial advisor through this process, or at least with your passive investing?
That's a great question because I used to. So for a long time, I always had a financial advisor. So that I realized kind of handicapped me in certain ways because I always just relied on someone else to track and help make my decisions and so on, where I never really understood it. But it wasn't until even maybe just 3 years ago that I started to take on my finances on my own, where I started to actually just pick up the phone and call Charles Schwab directly and had them help me understand and walk me through what I'm looking at, like in my account. What are these numbers? Like, what do they mean? How should I look at them? And that's even free, that I didn't have to pay a financial advisor for that kind of guidance or education. And of course, like just educating myself, not only online through videos and such, but talking to people like you, Nate. And like, that was really the most helpful, is talking to people who—
Wait, I'm just going to end it right then and there. Talking to people like you, Nate, and the most helpful, like you actually don't need to say anything after that.
Okay. Done. All you have to do is talk to Nate.
That's it. Got you covered.
Exactly.
Yeah, sorry to actually totally cut you off on that. And that was rude of me, and I apologize, but it did seem like the absolute
We're all
perfect
about
right
having
there.
fun here. So, I mean, retirement is a very fun topic. So
It really is. And I'm not jealous, but I am.
no jealousy needed. Enough.
Well, I had a very similar goal at one point. And I wanted to beat my dad, who retired at the ripe old age of 47. And, at some points along the way, personally, I changed my mind that I want to keep working, not trying to have the on the beach retirement. But even with what I'm doing now, like, it's just I've had a change of mindset of, here now I am in the seat of my passion and focused on my passion, and honestly really enjoying every day doing it. So it is like, even though, and you know what, it's all because of the financial freedom that I have enjoyed from, I did it very differently than you. Of course, everybody should be investing for their retirement, but I'm more so focused on being like an active investor, with creating the cash flows through real estate, through partnering with startup companies as they're trying to get their own level of success. So I'm calling this, even though I'm literally working more now than I have for 20 plus years, I'm calling this my own retirement early, because this doesn't feel like work anymore, except when I have to, sign checks. Then it really does feel like work. But short of that.
See, we're all just trying to get to where you are, Nate. Honestly, that's the whole idea, is that you get to spend your time on the things that are meaningful and enjoyable to you. And that's really what FIRE is about. So you don't have to retire in order to get that. You have it by focusing already on the things that are meaningful and enjoyable to you.
What do you mean by, or in general, not just you mean, but financial independence? What does it mean to you?
Financial independence to me just means that you're not dependent on working in order to, or earning income in order to sustain your lifestyle. So to me, it's more of just not having to have money be the consideration of what you work on or spend your time on.
So my wife, Jasmine, her dad kind of pursued a fire strategy, but he also did it a little bit differently as well. Of course, many years ago, where he had a corporate job with the electric company, spent his 20-ish years, got a pension. And as soon as that pension kicked in, he was still in his early 40s. And you know what? He said, thanks, but I'm going to go pursue my own passion, and literally opened up a record store in Oakland right around the 80s, when like the West Coast hip hop was really taking off. He'd have the Snoop Dogs of the world just kind of roll through to say hi and hello. But it was, well, listening to my wife Jasmine talk about it, it was a grueling time period, because operating a small business sure takes a lot of focus, kind of similar to what I'm doing now. But at the same time, he did it because he could have retired. He could have just sat on the beach, although the Bay Area water is way too cold for that.
Right.
But he was able to pursue his passion. And from him pursuing his record store passion, it really helped out Jasmine, who got to learn work ethic at a super young age as she's working in the store at the ripe old age of 11 or 12. Her brother leveraged the record store to have his own music career, and to this day is still surviving off of his passion. Now, he's the guy we should really all be jealous of. He pursued his passion early, and he's never changed directions.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess my overriding point is there's a lot of ways to do it. But at the end of the day, if you can quit saying, well, I'm going to the job for that dollar, and I'm going to do this because I love it, kind of seems at the end of the day like the goal that FIRE is really trying to get to, just how you step away from the corporate life or the work W-2 life as early as possible.
I love that, because that's really, like, those examples that you bring up are really what it's all about. And I think another way to kind of sum that up would be that you get to live your life in doing things out of love instead of out of fear, is also one way to look at it, or how some people tend to then live. Because a lot of times in our lives, we are driven by an underlying fear of not having enough, or not doing enough, or not achieving enough, and so on. But when you're living life the way you've described that Jasmine's dad and her brother have been living, they're living out of love, and then, or love of what they're doing and their passions, and then therefore the money comes from that.
I think at the end of the day that still making money, whether it's as an active investor or just pursuing your artistic dreams, I do absolutely expect all of our Christmas cards now to be in calligraphy. Just throwing it out there.
Okay.
The expectations have now officially.
I've got work to do.
Yeah, you got to get started now.
Helping fill my retirement time.
It is a good thing that now, in less than a month, you will have all of that time to work on all of those Christmas cards.
Oh boy. Hey, but I'll get to see you in Portugal next month.
I know. And then, I'm so jealous of where I'm not jealous at all. You've got an awesome summer planned.
As do you, my friend.
Well, you share and then I will share. Where are you going to go this summer?
Okay. Well, I'm kicking things off with Nate and Jasmine's vow renewal in Porto, Portugal. So thank you for that kickoff. It'll be an awesome way to start sort of the summer and the transition into, I guess, FIRE life. And so that will be the number one stop is Portugal. From there, I will be joining a friend in taking a road trip across Portugal through the Douro Valley. And then we'll be spending some time in Greece, mostly in Athens and other parts of Greece, visiting a friend who is from the US, but has decided to move over there. And also pursue a life of sort of freedom, as we call it. So yeah, so I will be heading to Greece for a month or two, and then coming back from that to the Joshua Tree area to then focus on getting this house built. What about you,
That
Nate?
sounds like an amazing summer. Well, I'm going to start in Barcelona, where we've got quite a bit of family that is showing up. So it's going to be a big group trip. And then we're going to do our vow renewal at a castle in Porto, Portugal. We've got over 60 RSVPs. So that many people are looking to have a good time across the world's pond. So I'm super excited for that. That'll be nice. And then we're going to roll right into me running with the bulls in Pamplona, Spain. Now, there was a big debate of whether to do that before the vow renewal or afterwards. And what actually ended up winning out was, well, if I got gored afterwards,
Oh God.
well, Jasmine can
Such
still enjoy her
logic.
vacation. If I get gored before, all the plans are off. So after I try not to get stuck with the horns in Pamplona,
Please
Spain,
don't.
I'll do my best. I'm starting to work out again. I've been doing it like every day so I can be able to run that quarter mile, half mile, or whatever it is.
I believe in you.
I am very hopeful. Then we'll go from there to the Bordeaux Valley up in France and do a little wine tasting and look at the chateaus and, drink wine with our pinkies out and try to be as fancy as possible. We actually, one of Jasmine's clients, who's become a great friend, left the United States and bought a vineyard out there in southern France someplace. So I think we're going to go and try to catch up with that guy and see where, he had short hair, looked very much like in a suit and tie and just a normal person. Then did his own financial independence, retire early. He had the unfortunate experience that it got funded by family passing away and insurance proceeds. So kind of a note for everybody, there's so many different ways to accomplish your financial independence. I will never say that that's a great way, but he's set up pretty well for life. And now he's working his vineyard out there in France. There's his retirement early. So we'll go and see him. Then we're going to take off, go to Morocco, where still expecting that you'll show us the path, because I know you spent a good amount of time out there during your own short-term retirement.
Yep, I might just hop into your suitcase.
I think that would be awesome. Then finally, the Palma de Mallorca, little island off the coast of Spain, near Ibiza. I think I have aged out of Ibiza, but that's always a wonderful trip as well.
Yeah, I kind of missed that boat too. I never went.
I've been quite a few times. I had my time. It sure was fun. I'm too old now. The gray hairs have really set in a little bit too much. The last time we went to Ibiza, it was actually something very similar. So the last time went to a wedding with same thing, but it was a wedding in Barcelona. The couple that got married are doing the exact same thing as what Jazz and I are doing. Hey, everybody, here's our travel trip. We'd love if you could join us. Well, for them, their second stop was in Ibiza. And if you don't know, Ibiza is like the Cancun of Europe. It is just kind of a vacation and party central. And there were about 18 of us. We rented a bunch of scooters, 9 scooters. Of the 9 scooters, 5 came back because people kept wrecking them.
Oh God, that's not surprising.
Oh, it was so much fun. Did the little trip around the island, and we end up where we're seeing this beautiful sunset over the Mediterranean Ocean. It's gorgeous until the next person crashes. There
You
were a
know,
lot of crashes that day.
you know what? You say you're too old to be out there. I actually think it'd be awesome for a bunch when you're 80 and you're all great to be out there on your scooters crashing into each other. Just
Rock it out.
wear some knee pads.
Hey, abs, or maybe a helmet.
That too. Denture
But
protectors.
bingo. But so now we're copying this other couple, and we do have a lot of people showing up. I'm so excited that you're going to be there, and anybody else that is able to join.
Yeah, it'll be a dreamy few days.
That's the
Actually, a
goal.
dreamy whole summer for you.
Right back at you in your retirement.
Yeah, high five.
Jane, do you have 3 tips for how anybody can accomplish the FIRE lifestyle that you have?
Yeah. So I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think just to be very explicit about it. So 3 important things about the FIRE lifestyle, if you want to pursue this, is 1, you have to have, it all starts from the mindset of valuing time more than things, or valuing the freedom of your time more than things, and focusing your time on things, or only things that are meaningful to you, and enjoyable to you, or what you're passionate about, like we talked about. Because the reason why I think that is number 1 and most important is because if you have that mindset, then it will automatically help you make decisions in a way that are more in line with that mindset. For example, I moved to the middle of the desert, not because it was cheaper to live here, even though it is significantly cost less to live here than in Los Angeles, but it's because I loved the adventure aspect of being out in this beautiful, growing and thriving desert town. And so mindset is very important. And secondly, which is related to mindset as well, is having this internal intention of spending that time, or how you want to spend that time, what you would want to pursue if you didn't have to think about money. What would you be doing every day if you woke up and didn't have to make money at all? And if you don't know, that's okay. If you don't have the answer to that, but you have to have the intention to want to understand what it is that fuels you and drives you, in order to not let that free time go to waste. And then third,
Okay, I totally feel like we just got left standing.
you
when we hit
understand more.
number. Whoa. The funniest thing, you froze the second you said third, with the funniest looking face on the screen. So you got to start with the third thing all over again.
Oh man, don't you love it when that happens? Thanks, Zoom. All right. So, and the third thing would be around the financial planning and making sure you're set up for success as you detach from sort of the earned income world, to the passive and by choice active investments in income generation world. So along with that are some of the tools like mint.com that track your expenses and budgeting to help you understand visually like where you stand, how much you need to be comfortable in retirement. And then like personalcapital.com helps you track your net worth and get a visual sense of also where you stand and how your investment is performing. Because we talked about a little bit earlier, some of these assumptions you may want to make is like, how much return can you reasonably assume over a long term? And so having a picture of where you stand financially, both your investments in income as well as your expenses, will help you calculate what you need in order to retire. And we already talked a little bit about sort of the details around that, like taking assumptions and how you calculate that, and also at what age. So I'm 43 now, and so my fire age.
Whoa, You
Is
totally dated yourself.
I did, and I think that's important for people may want to know, so like how early or how, when can they retire? And so just to give you a sense of where I'm at and how early or later you want to consider. I know in the fire community, people are doing this as early as in their early 30s. I wasn't in tune with that until later in my life, but at this point, having this, figuring out what age or what point in time you can have that cutoff and transition over to financial independence is the third sort of aspect of it.
I love it. And for my 2 cents, for whatever it's worth, the financial independence, I see that as being so important so that you can pursue your passions and retire early. And this goes to your point the whole way. It doesn't necessarily mean hanging out on the beach with the pina coladas. It
Unless you
actually
want
just
to.
means, unless you want to, but more than anything, the freedom to pursue your passions. And your passion may involve a side hustle, a small business opportunity, or it may include a real estate investments where you become more of an active investor or landlord rather than just simply passively investing in the stock market or into other people's real estate syndications. So it's, I think that financial independence, as long as you do exactly what this lady right here, Jane, says, everybody can enjoy that and then enjoy their best life.
I'm wishing you all your own best lives and your own version of financial freedom and independence.